Hi everyone, I'm Father Travis Crotty. I'm the Vocations Director for the Diocese of Sioux City, and I'm excited to talk about Ember Days that Bishop Nicholas has recently promulgated. So Ember Days are these days of fasting and prayer that are in the history and the life of the church that fall kind of in these in-between seasons as we transition from summer into fall and then later on throughout the year. What are these Ember Days? Well, they're days to focus on a particular need. Earlier this summer, we had the Sunday reading from Martha and Mary, a really fascinating experience in the Gospels where the human heart and the lack of the human heart is highlighted. Martha comes to Jesus and asks for something. Mary needs something and receives it from Jesus. So when we can recognize in ourselves that we have a lack and a need in our life, we can turn to God for that. Well, in our contemporary times, sometimes it's difficult to realize that we need much when we have everything that we need, maybe on the surface, at the tip of our fingers. So why do we turn to fasting? Well, it's to emphasize the lack and the need in our heart that only God can fulfill. All of us have a lack and a need that only God can fulfill, but in particular in the church, we need God to give us His grace, and that comes through the sacraments. We need God to give us His grace in the Eucharist and confession and baptism and holy matrimony and anointing of the sick, if there's any other ones I forgot. But we need God's grace in our life. One particular way that God gives us His grace is through the instruments of the priesthood. Men who are called out of the world to be ordained priests, to become instruments and vessels of God's grace for our people here in the diocese. We know that we have a lack of priestly vocations. That's nothing new, but it's felt especially as a number of priests retire. So we turn in these Ember Days, the first being September 16th, to pray and to fast for a renewal of faith, a renewal of married life, of families, and in particular, an increase to vocations in the priesthood. But we realize that lack only when we kind of focus on the physical lack. So fasting, like we experienced during Lent, that as Roman Catholics we do so poorly sometimes, we just might give up chocolate or Dr. Pepper, but might not really fast from what we don't truly need. So a traditional way of fasting, like we do on Good Friday or on Ash Wednesday, is to fast from like a full meal. So to have one full meal during the day, but then maybe to have two smaller meals where we still realize, wait, I'm not totally satisfied. And not with food, but I'm also not totally satisfied with the world, and I need God's grace. And I think in a more important way than food today, that would be social media and our constant access to entertainment. To set aside the noise and distraction of our Instagram or Facebook or just our constant news thread, and to step aside in silence to be with God. To pray a rosary, to spend time in front of Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament in adoration, or just to read quietly His scriptures that He gives us. All of these different ways are ways of focusing on our need, on our lack of our heart, and ultimately turning to God for what He has to give us in place of that lack, in place of that need. So please join Bishop Nicholas, please join me and all of our brother priests in celebrating and offering these Ember Days for an increase of faith, of holiness, and in particular, an increase of vocations to the priesthood, religious life in the Diocese of Sioux City. God bless and see you soon.